The Pittsburgh Steelers are drowning, and they're drowning fast. And now the big question is who's going to play quarterback this week? And their answer is, well, there's just no need for it. There's no need for the way they are going about the situation in week 16, preparing for the Bengals. What's going on, everybody? I'm Noah Strackmine. Thank you for jumping on to Steelers to Go, your daily to-go cup of Pittsburgh Steelers news and analysis. Find us on youtube.com/All Steelers Talkers. Subscribe anywhere you get your podcast. The Pittsburgh Steelers, they're 7-7. They're heading into week 16 where they host the Cincinnati Bengals. Things are drowning. The ship is sinking. Things are as bad as they have been in a long, long time. And now the questions are, is Mike Tomlin going to leave? Do you clean house completely and get rid of all the drama, all the diva within the locker room? Do you have any leaders? Are your leaders good enough? Is your talent good enough? What positions do you need to target? And then there is the simple question of week 16, and that is, who's going to start at quarterback? And is Mitch Trubisky going to be the guy again? Do you go to Mason Rudolph for the first time in a couple of years? Is Kenny Pickett available? And, well, Mike Tomlin gave us some sort of answer. It wasn't a good one, but he did acknowledge the question. And he said right now it's undecided, that they are uncertain how they will go about their quarterback situation this week, that they don't know if it'll be Mason Rudolph or Mitch Trubisky. Tomlin also said that Kenny Pickett might make his way back. And I think right now, in the current state of the Pittsburgh Steelers, it makes absolutely no sense to do anything but one thing, maybe one and a half things, depending on your faith in this team and its ability to turn things around. Let's start with what they should do. The obvious answer, if Kenny Pickett cannot go, which it does not seem likely that he will go, reports outside of Tomlin say that a more realistic timeline is week 17 against the Seattle Seahawks. He just underwent surgery on a high ankle sprain. This guy is still viewed as your starting quarterback next season and a guy that the Steelers might give another opportunity to, and they're not going to move away from. And in worst case scenario, the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to look at the situation. They're going to draft somebody or bring somebody else in, and it's going to be to compete with Kenny Pickett, not take over his job. They're going to give him an opportunity to see if they have a guy in Kenny. And if I had to take a guess, a realistic guess, just judging on who the Pittsburgh Steelers are, who they've been, how they operate, and how, well, quite frankly, they got to where they are and how this ship began to sunk in the first place, they're going to give Kenny every opportunity next season to prove that he is the guy because they want him to be that guy. Right now, rushing him back for an injury for a team that is a full game out of the playoffs that needs a lot of help to get back into the playoffs. And yeah, they certainly benefit a little bit by beating the Cincinnati Bengals, no doubt about it, but they already have the Indianapolis Colts that they need to lose a game in the next 3 weeks, or probably 2 games in the next 3 weeks. They need at least somebody else to lose at least 2 games in the next 3 weeks. It's not a good situation to be in if you're the Pittsburgh Steelers. The 2 teams ahead of them are the Houston Texans, and the Indianapolis Colts, and that's before you get into the Cincinnati Bengals and the Cleveland Browns and how chances are they're not catching any of these teams. You want to know why? Because they've lost to all of them. And the tiebreakers, yeah, they hold some over some teams, but in the grand scheme of things, these next 3 weeks, they look very glim. They look like the road is as narrow as it gets in Mike Tomlin's train of thought or wording there. And it brings up the clear, easy answer that Kenny Pickett should not go this week. You should not rush him back from injury. You should not risk further injury. This guy has been injured a lot this season. He's been injured a lot the last 2 years. And right now, you got to look at the situation and just say, get into next season. This year's a bust. It stinks. It happens. There's going to be questions. If I'm Mike Tomlin, my job is certainly on the table this year. I don't know what the future holds. And if Mike Tomlin's fighting for his job, and that's how he views these next 3 weeks, is I got to win over Art Rooney, I got to win over the boss to keep my job in 2024, then yeah, you play Kenny Pickett. But if you're thinking long-term, if you're thinking, okay, I see what everybody else sees and that this is a bad football team and maybe next year we could be a better football team, then Kenny Pickett is not starting this week by no means. And I get it. The coaches aren't going to think the same way that I'm thinking or that you're thinking or that a lot of people are thinking. They're going to think we need a competitive advantage. We need the best players out there. if you're going to think realistically about the situation, which is what they won't do but should do, Kenny Pickett does not play this week. And it brings up the question, who does? Is it Mitch Trubisky? Is it Mason Rudolph? Mike Tomlin isn't set to answer that question yet, and I'm sure that they'll hold a competition this week, and he'll go into Monday and he'll say Mason Rudolph will get an opportunity. I bet you that's what he says. Mason Rudolph will get an opportunity. Maybe he does name him the starter. I would be a bit surprised if he just comes out and says that, but I would think that they open it up to a competition with Mason holding the upper hand, and that is the only answer that you can go with. Mitch Trubisky cannot go back out there for the Pittsburgh Steelers. He's broken. He's a guy that I thought had much more potential than what he brought to Pittsburgh. And to be totally honest, I think that the Pittsburgh Steelers ruined Mitch Trubisky, or at least the little bit that he had left to give in the NFL. And that's just how bad the Steelers offense was. That's how bad the locker room culture is. That's how bad and how just angry the fan base is right now. And I don't blame the fan base at all, because I would be just as angry, and everybody has every right to be as angry as they are with every player and every coach, including Mitch Trubisky. But I think Mitch Trubisky's broken. I don't think at this point you could send him back out there and say, hey, this is a guy that's going to try and win us games. He's going to give it a good attempt. He's not going to pull through, though. He's not going to be able to get it done. And I don't know if Mason Rudolph does either. But this is the direction that you go. You go with Mason Rudolph. You stop asking questions. You stop opening up competition, and you just say, hey, this is Mason Rudolph's job right now. This is how you handle the situation. We'll see if he could win. He's 5-4-1 as a starter for the Pittsburgh Steelers. I get it. He hasn't played since 2021, but they're desperate. They need an answer. Maybe Mason Rudolph is that answer. I don't want to say he is. I don't feel confident in saying that he is. But I will say that if I was the head coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers, I'm not even considering a competition this week. I'm just straight up 100%. This is Mason Rudolph's job in week 16. We'll see what happens in week 17. Hopefully, Kenny Pickett could come back. But for right now, this is Mason's job. And if we're going to be even more honest, if the Steelers lose against Cincinnati on the 23rd, Kenny Pickett isn't playing again for the rest of the season. There's no point in it. You keep Mason out there. You see if worst case scenario, Mason Rudolph can be your third quarterback in 2024. And I know that that is crazy low, that is the lowest bar you could possibly set as an organization to use these last 3 weeks and see if you have a third string quarterback next year. But maybe that's where the Steelers are right now. And that's tough to say, but it's the truth. And if they lose against Cincinnati, you just test the waters and see what you got in Mason. And then you move it into 2024 and you hope that you can rebuild in the offseason and that you can make the necessary changes and adjustments and attitude adjustments and attitude changes to get this thing rolling in the right direction. Right now, though, there's no quarterback competition. There's no question about whether or not this should be Mitch Trubisky or Mason Rudolph. There's no debate on whether Kenny Pickett is coming back. If you're going to be realistic about the situation, it's easy and it's drawn out for you already. It is Mason Rudolph's job in week 16. If you win, it's Kenny Pickett's job in week 17. If you lose, it is Mason Rudolph's job for the rest of the season, and you somewhat pack it in. That's where the Pittsburgh Steelers stand. I don't want to hear any nonsense about a quarterback competition, and I get it. I get everybody who's going to say, well, Mason's not that good. I can't believe we'd have faith in Mason Rudolph. You got to give Mitch another chance. Mason's just really, really bad. I don't think anybody disagrees or is trying to argue that either one of these quarterbacks is a starting caliber quarterback. I think the only argument right now is that Mitch he's beat up emotionally, mentally, and physically. Kenny is not ready to go. Mason is your next option. And that's where the Pittsburgh Steelers stand. And that's how they should approach this week.